Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twilight Epiphanies Talk Radio with Cindy Magnuson, and the show is about to begin. So, slow down, take a seat, put your feet up, and maybe take some notes, because this show is about you, it's for you, and it is designed to help you receive exactly what you need to be a happier and healthier you. So hello everyone, and welcome to Twilight Epiphanies Talk Radio, and this is the 23rd episode tonight and the very first show in the series, the Twilight Epiphanies Honor Roll, which will be featuring Bairavee Balasubramaniam, the Sky Priestess, holistic astrologer. So I am your host, Cindy Magnuson, the owner of C Source Energy Epiphanies and founder of the C Technique EFT Plus. And tonight, let me tell you a little bit about this fascinating woman who is heading this series in the honor roll, because she is a very high degree woman, an exceptionally remarkable and special lady with so many pursuits and interests that it's remarkable that all of this is bundled up here into one very special lady. She came into the world as a self-taught learner, reading encyclopedias at the age of 4, and later tested in her teens, receiving a score of 172 on the Mensa IQ testing, which places her in the top 2% genius in the world. She achieved both her high school and college degrees in less than half the time that one normally achieves these levels of degrees, went on to skip a master's, and then achieved a doctorate in political sciences with a thesis of over 100,000 words. Her naturally humanitarian heart kept her close to her roots, and she was an active participant in social work, seeking to develop improvements in the social, economic, and educational systems in her Malaysian-Indian culture. She worked alongside her father, Thannambikkai Balasubramaniam, who coined the phrase in her Tamil language, which means self-confidence seminar, that made motivational seminars available across all levels of the Malaysian-Indian culture. She has spoken on various Tamil language television and radio shows in Malaysia, with an active interest in raising awareness of the brain and its greater capacities to empower us. She grew up with a passionate interest in astronomy, astrophysics, and neuroscience, and later visited sacred sites around the world while pursuing academics in the UK, which furthered her interest as a spiritualist, all unfolding into the multidimensional and multifaceted woman that she is today. She beautifully describes herself as a post-structural, post-cultural feminine academic, a political scientist, motivator, poet, priestess, an ethnic minority, internationalist, holistic astrologer, and public speaker. And on a very personal note here, I want to say that I have brought Bairavee on tonight in this series, which last week I opened up the shows and talked about why I am doing this series and placing it in the terms of an honor roll, answering the call to grace. And the call to grace is a space, for my perception of the word, where an individual here embraces high-level concepts of spirituality and maintains a very special integrity, honesty, sincerity, humbleness, compassion, and nurturing in their work, without falling prey to some of the energies that have persuaded many spiritual pursuits off of their path. And as I was researching Bairavee's work, in order to learn more about her, which was so fascinating. So I'm looking very forward tonight for her to give us some more information about her journey up to becoming her position as the Sky Priestess today. And I found on her Facebook page where she also manages an e-magazine called The Voice of the Soul. And her reason for establishing the magazine is why she is here. So in her words, she began the magazine because she wanted to address the misconceptions and misdirections in spirituality when the ego can sometimes become too assertive and it mixes with spiritual philosophy and takes a wrong turn and moves into over-commercialization, oversimplification, and a mistranslation of spiritual traditions and archetypes. Some paths and their labels become very divisive, separatist, and polarizing, the exact opposite of what true spiritual contemplations and work is all about. Guru worship becomes so powerful that individuals forget to be listening to their own inner guides. And when I read that, my heart just, beamed with that same resonance, because that is something that in her work as she embraces is so very important today. And every day when I hear her words, I am hearing her say the same statement in her work, that we need to listen to our inner guides. And yet at the same time, we very much need to refine what are the true voices of our inner guides. So she sums up her work in this e-magazine with, I have created a space, I, you, me, and we facilitate awakening in a universal, inclusive, boundary-crossing, and accessible way. The magazine and her work represents and honors the need to create that communal, sacred space that all can participate in, a place where people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, paradigms, belief systems, and worldviews can come together and express the song of their soul. They do not favor one path or another, but seek to stir your soul awake through a shared sense of connection back to source. Yay! And that is why I love her. I couldn't have put that any better myself in saying it. She has the most beautiful expression of words and poetry. In a small space of words, she has the capacity to say so much all at once. So with that, I'm going to open up the mic and welcome Bairavee to the show. Hello there. Hello, Bairavee.
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can. At first, I was only hearing a little. So yes, now we can hear you. Good. I was trying to see if headphones would work on this mobile phone, but apparently not. But first of all, thank you so much for that beautiful, beautiful introduction. I'm listening to it and going, oh my God, is she talking about this? Oh my God, is that me? Is she talking about me? Holy shit, can I live up to this? So this is my first. It's okay. There's totally no pressure, but definitely I know the truth, and you carry that all the time in that space in your heart. It shows every single day in your work. Everyone is here, or who will listen to this in the archives knows that about you, and we love that about you, and we are just totally here tonight, especially to very much support you in all that you are doing, all that you have upcoming. In all ways, we are here to support you and see you grow so you can continue to share your heart and your amazing spiritual philosophy with us. So,
thank you so much.
You are welcome. I would love to begin with that introduction that brings us through the changes that you went through. You began with interests pursuing political sciences, working to potentially change some of the government structures in your country, and then you move, potentially you were thinking of working with as a neurosurgeon as well. Then you also did the workshops of self-empowerment where you talked about the brain's capacities, which then you ended up here with us as the holistic astrologer. Can you take us through those transitions and give us some highlights of the turning points that moved you through there?
Okay, now that's a tough question. Well, generally, I tend to think of my life as a little bit of a pinball in a pinball machine. So I hit one corner, and then I hit another corner, and then I hit another corner, and the universe just keeps me moving. When I was a kid, according to my mom, I used to hug my astronomy book under my pillow. I didn't have a teddy bear. I had an astronomy book. And I still remember I absolutely loved the picture that book had of Saturn. And I was completely obsessed with black holes. I mean, I was about 4. I was listening. Mostly at this age, I was still listening to documentaries talking about string theory and talking about Einstein-Rosen bridges and talking about all that kind of stuff. But the thing that really got my interest was this black hole. And I always just looked at it and I thought, yeah, I probably come from somewhere like that. You know, considering I was born in 1986. So this was in the early 90s. And so all of this stuff was very, very new. The New Age movement was already around, but we just didn't have the language to express this, let alone as a child. So I just looked at black holes and Saturn, and I just felt like, yeah, something about this just feels very familiar, much more familiar than Earth ever did, or Earth still does. So I started off there wanting to be an astrophysicist of some kind because it felt like that would take me back to whatever my home space was, whatever planet I came from. And then after that, it was actually my mom who brought me to the next step of that journey. My mom pioneered a learning methodology or mechanism that would actually help children accelerate their education, and she and I have worked with thousands of children together. And it was already from that age on that I kind of figured, well, Mom knows how to do something. Part of it was my aptitude, and the other part of it was having a mom who could really weave stories together in very powerful ways. Like she would take a grain of rice, and from that grain of rice teach me about history and geography and so on and so forth. Not in those words, but in addition to that, I was the kind of kid who liked encyclopedias. I literally liked them. And I just read the whole World Book series and everything when I was very young. So basically just, I was like a knowledge monster. I just went nom, 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 and I wanted more. So first I looked at space and I kind of went, I didn't have the tools. And then I said, okay, I'll look at myself and see what I got. So I have a brain. And then I got more interested in the brain. And as I was growing up, especially in the early 1990s, if you are an academically accelerated child in Malaysia, you were often at the end of deeply, deeply divisive, racist, prejudicial attitudes. And my parents did their best. They sent me to a private school, and they had seen a similar experience from my brother who went to a government school, and he got mercilessly picked on. I always say that my brother is smarter than me, better looking than me, more charismatic than me, but he really got the short end of the stick there. And he is in his own spiritual healing field and so on. But, it's weird. We're 6 years apart, but we're more like twins. It's funny. But coming back to point, so I went to a private school, and I basically got berated every single day. Not just by the kids, but by the teachers. We literally had to go and fight with the school administration each and every single year, just to make sure that I would have the recognition that I should be getting because I was top of my class. The reason being, they did not believe that an Indian girl, specifically a Tamil girl, Tamil is a minority clustered in the southern part of India, that a Tamil girl could be intelligent. So my mother went in and fought like a tigress for me each and every single day. That is like one of the most powerful memories of my life. She went in and she fought for my rights, and that brought me into an awareness of social justice issues and racial imbalances from like the age of 6. So my father, on the other hand, I know this sounds like I was born like with a silver spoon. Believe me, it wasn't. I was born with a lot of interesting personalities in my household, every one of which is a spiritual giant in their own right. My dad, as you very graciously mentioned, is the founder of motivational speaking in the Tamil language in a way that is accessible to all classes and walks of life. So he was a social reformer, and I looked at him, and I was the kind of kid who looked at him and wanted to speak on stage. So I would actually record over all the tapes in my house, pretending to be my dad. I wasn't pretending to be me. It was my dad. I wanted to be like my dad. So I was used to being in the public eye from a very, very young age. So all of these things put together, racism from society, seeing the need for social justice, having the kind of brain that did not like playing with dolls but preferred to read encyclopedias instead. I like soft toys now. It freaks my mom out. But when I was a kid, I just did not touch anything. I just wanted my books. That's all I wanted. And realizing that, well, mom's got something here. There's something interesting about people and human beings. They're thinking about things. So all of this stuff kind of coalesced before I was 16. And then at 16, just because the schools didn't want me, they didn't know what to do with me, I tried going to college. The professor very politely said, she needs a special school, because they didn't know how to mark my papers. I was 15, and I wrote this paper on the socio-economic impacts of human immortality. It was probably OTT for the class, but I didn't know it at the time, I just did what I thought was good, and I kind of freaked everybody out. And I was also very critical. I was also very critical of more entrenched, bigoted views embedded in my own race and in my own religion, because by no means are we all perfect. And I was already getting critical and vocal of that too. There is racism outside our communities and in our communities. Doesn't matter what color we are. It's always hidden somewhere. So all of this is happening when I'm 15. I'm speaking on government radio, doing programs. And, I emerged as Malaysia's youngest trainer and speaker, especially focused on my community. And we were talking to thousands of people a week. And the government actually told me to get off air for 2 weeks, because I said, well, you know what, this educational system does not work with both hemispheres of the brain. At that time, the left brain, right brain theory was very strong, still some truth to it. But now we know that there's more variation in the functional centers of the brain itself. But the government really took it very personally and just said that I shouldn't be speaking for 2 weeks. And at that point, I'm about 15, and I kind of go, all right, screw this. This place is not going to hold me. And then I just studied by myself. In fact, I already stopped schooling at 11. I taught myself my high school curriculum. I finished my high school at 13, and I was basically just working full-time at my dad's social center. Unpaid child labor, that's a different issue, but, he was my father. I'm working with him, so on and so forth. And I got a hand of office administration in my early teens, and I was just working as an adult, which might sound weird to some people, but that was just how I was wired. It also helps that I am a Capricorn. We age in reverse. So,
okay.
And we do. We really age in reverse. Now in my 30s, I'm doing all the things I didn't do as a kid, and I am loving it. And like I said, it is totally freaking out my mom. So all of that stuff just came together. And when I was 16, I managed to get a scholarship to a university, college. At the time it was a college. It's now a university. It's called Manchester College in Indiana. And they saw potential in me, and they gave me the largest scholarship that they could, because, despite the fact everyone was doing awesome things, we did not have finances. So I had to support myself through every step of the journey. Just stand in that room, read, or at least that's what I tell people. Most of the time I just watched cartoons and studied very little, but it worked. And, it was anime, but it was so good. And, so then my journey really began overseas when I was 16. And that's really when I would say, because I had accelerated so quickly intellectually, I didn't give as much time to my emotional development. And being away from the nexus of all of this stuff just gave me that room. So I began to develop myself as a person. I began to understand languages of my heart and my spirit and my soul, and eventually my body that I didn't have access to through a book. So from 16 to 19, I was first in America. Then I jumped over to Germany. I finished my degree in record time, President's List Scholar, yada, yada, yada. But I also discovered that I loved art and I loved dancing, so that was good. And then I took a year off because I had some family stuff. So then I think about just before I turned 21, I got accepted to a PhD program in Germany. In the United Kingdom. And that was a big opportunity. I then did a 5-year research project on the Indian Parliament, studying the ways in which gender and ceremony and ritual operate in a very nuanced way on the stage of political theater. And you might think it's a bit of a jump, but in my life story, all of these threads just keep coming together again and again and again. Race, performance, space, spirituality, politics, all throughout my life. I looked at my chart, and there's a very specific chart called the Draconian chart, which kind of shows you what your soul came here to do. And I'm looking at that now going, oh, my God, this was all part of the plan. A crazy plan, but it was the plan. Yes. And it's still the plan.
Yes,
This life did not exactly a fun on the menu. But, I make room. I mean, I was just like, I goof around most of the time at home with my family. And so I'm preparing for the session, and you would think I'd be in calm contemplation, whatever. But I listen to Rocky. So, I'm pumping myself up. I'm jumping around. I'm making toast. And, it's how I integrate all of this stuff. So fast forward, I finished my PhD. I think I was about 25. I was in 2012. And, that's a big year, and then I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I just kind of got a little bit burnt out and disillusioned. I met this wonderful teacher in the U.S. called Professor Benson Onyeji in Indiana, and he's the one who turned me over to African history and then North American history, and through that politics and political institutions. And I followed that route up to the point where I realized that, pardon my French, but this is shit. It's just so much theater that happens in the political world that there is little substance that actually allows a person to make change. In that gap year, when I was 20, I was actually accepted to a place in Germany called the Hertie School of Governance, and I wanted to start a master's of public policy there. And I just looked at the way they were teaching things, which is totally fine for people in public policy, but it didn't engage me critically. Either one side of the system tried to do good, but in such a formulaic way in which you couldn't change the system, or the people who could change the system, as I learned in my PhD, just got so stuck in their positions of privilege and power and success, so much so that even if they wanted to change it, they couldn't anymore. The system was too set. So I remember I guess my life in some sense has already been learning about the ways in which the bureaucracy and the power structure is set up for me to basically go, I don't want to participate in this. So I needed to find an access to a different kind of spiritual power, a different kind of power. I didn't know what it was until I finished my PhD. Now, I have been psychic throughout my life. Like my mom used to say, when I was a baby, if someone was going to die in a house nearby, I would not let them step in the house. Within 2 weeks, I would know. I would just screech my head off. So my mom will know, okay, she's screaming. She's not letting me go in. Someone's going to die. So I just always had psychic sensitivities. And believe me, with my kind of life, that has been hell. It has not been fun. So on top of this, intelligent child, sensitive child who's being bullied left, right, and center, and able to see things that other children cannot. That was not a good combination, but it was what I had to live through. So, and, I had this very on and off relationship with spirituality and religion because it was just too much, just dealing with my basic existence, already, kind of pushed through racial and gendered barriers wherever I went. I didn't need this other complication, but it still found its way in, as it inevitably does. So I finally decided to embrace it after I had finished my PhD, and I had started a Facebook page. And it did attract several thousand people back when Facebook algorithms were more generous. And I just kept sharing inspirational things. And one day, I don't remember the exact date, but I think it was late in 2013, perhaps, towards the end of the year in 2013, something just woke up in my brain. It wasn't something I thought about. It wasn't something that I planned or thought I was ever going to do. Suddenly, I just woke up one morning and I knew how to do astrology. And the most I had ever done was when I was 5. I had this astrology book, and all I liked doing was looking at it. I liked looking. I just looked. It was a bit creepy. I just kept looking at it. And the only thing I remember from that book is that Capricorn was said to be a domineering parent. That is all I remember from that book. But beyond then, no real exposure. So I just woke up one day with this knowledge, and then I tried to acquaint myself with the way other people were talking about and teaching astrology, and I found, and it's not to say that anyone's wrong, it's just to say that the way it came to me was so different that I had to teach myself in the same way I had done for everything else. I had to find my own path, my own language, because that's the kind of paintbrush the universe decided I needed to be. So it ain't no ego shit. It's just the way I'm wired. So I had to find ways to really think about the stars. In fact, what was very different for me is the way I approach astrology was not through logic. Because I was very good at math, I was very good at calculus and so on and so forth. I wanted to be a physicist at one point, and you would think that's how I approached it. But I couldn't. I wasn't allowed to. The moment I made it about my head, I lost touch with it. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to go at this in a completely different way. And so I approached astrology through my heart and hopefully through my deeper spirit. I allowed my mind to take a back seat to actually just translate what was coming through rather than what I thought the stars needed to say. So, all of that life biography thingamajiggy just kind of led to this point of this has been a complete journey of deconstruction. How old am I going to be this year? I'm going to be 32 this year, very, very soon. And, in some sense, to get to this point where I am right now, which is by no means even a midpoint of the journey, it's really required me to start from somewhere, realize that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that does work, and to actually just keep going on from there. And I have no idea what's going to come next, but, pinball machine, what you going to do?
That was perfect. Thank you, and thank you. As you were talking, I was nodding my head up and down and grinning from ear to ear. Of course, I first met you through your talk that you had with Bernhard Gunther in one of the podcasts, and you were expressing your ideas there as far as working through less of an interpretation from what's on paper and more just from what you're receiving. And as we discussed, that is also part of a lot of what I resonate with. The listening audience may not be aware of that. I've shared with Bairavee that I do numerology, and I've come to that same conclusion of having to work outside of what's on the paper and more just from what's exactly in front of you right there, which brings me to your readings. So I would like to tell the audience that I, at the earlier part of this month, did have a reading with you. It was my, I would say it actually was my first astrology reading, other than some things that I had pulled up online from time to time, just some freebie information. And so that everyone is aware, I'm a 20-year veteran here, and also, like Bairavee, am a studyaholic, and so I am very particular about who I might be interested in giving me a reading, because I need someone who can read exactly as she expressed. And I'm sitting in front of Bairavee, and she pinpoints exactly to a T not only perspectives that I hadn't been able to even see and put together. Of course, reading for myself, I have a pretty good in-depth understanding. I needed someone who could give me something new and interesting. And not only did she pick up exactly what I needed to know about a family member, which was so incredibly helpful to bring that up to the surface. It answered so many questions, and I have implemented and put into practice the advice that you gave me on everything so far, and I have progressed since the middle of this month exponentially already. So that was a very big marker for me and a movement for me. So I thank you, and I highly encourage everyone here to have a reading with Bairavee, because it is very spot on. And again, a lot of times what we encounter in readings is that people come in and they want to hear something that's typical. And what needs to be said is just simply what's received in the moment, and you do that so very well. So thank you for that. And I wanted to just say, very interesting, at the age of 4, and it sounds like you just came in with such a high capacity that you came in with more of your memories, and they were unfolding at such an early age. And what I was even going to remark about in bringing you on was that you do embody a remarkable high left brain and high right brain. And that is exactly what the world needs to activate into right now. So we thank you for going through all of those life experiences of ping-ponging off of here to there to get to here. So now the listeners here are very much interested in hearing also then about what we have upcoming in the year ahead of us. I heard the magical word Jupiter. So, and also want to tell you that I will have you go on for about a half an hour, and then after about a half an hour, I'll do a commercial break at that time. We'll just take a couple minutes. But anyway, so if you would start with telling the audience about what you see coming up for 2019.
All right. Well, first of all, before we get to that, let us do a little bit of we could call it a prayer, or just a little bit of alignment. Okay? So yes. We want to just set the intention that the information that is transmitted and the information that is received is in our individual and our collective highest and deepest good. And we set this intention, we allow that which resonates and that which is useful to go to the core of our being, and what does not resonate, what is not useful, to be sent back to source. All information is sacred, but even the sacred needs to find the right key and the right doorway to enter at the right time. So we'll just take a minute or two, center ourselves, set that intention. For those of you who feel the need to call in some protective guides or just way showers or navigators that you work with, feel free to do so. And we just allow for a healthy expression of divine source energy to move through this as we proceed. And let's just take a couple of seconds. And we're good to go. So let's look at what we are doing right now. Now, the reason why we actually talked about doing this interview a while back, and we were not able to do so. mostly because I was dyingly ill. Now, of course, not truly dying, but it certainly felt that way. And that was kind of because of what Mercury is doing. Part of feeling astrology often means that my body goes through the transits as they are happening. So that's one of the reasons why sometimes I don't need to look at a chart. I'll just kind of feel my body going, oh, my left hip is feeling this today. It's got to be this guy. And that's kind of how I've learned to navigate as well. So when Mercury was in reverse, what we call as retrograde, now really the planets are not in reverse. It just looks that way from the earthbound perspective. But when Mercury was moving in retrograde, we had to do a lot of digging, especially when Mercury retrograde was in Scorpio. So through that process, we have been really going backwards into ourselves, into our ancestral lines, into, the source of us, to really come forth and pull forward what needs to see the light of day. So this has been a very inward process. We have been releasing from our minds, our bodies, our cellular memories. We've been going straight into that DNA of ours, releasing old messages that need to be heard. With some artistic license with the use of the word DNA, but you get what I'm saying. We have gone into our code to rewire what no longer works. And this is an incredibly intense process. And only just a short while ago, really, I think it would have been December the 12th in the U.S., did Mercury actually finally finish its gig with Scorpio, and we then saw Mercury in Sagittarius. And this was why we wanted to do this recording now, because it was better to have it in this sign rather than the one that was churning and transforming and destroying and rebirthing and doing its gig, which is Scorpio. So with Mercury in Sagittarius, we have a bit more of a green flag to really go ahead with the kind of information that we are going to need to chart our path ahead. So this is what we are experiencing right now, which is great for this kind of work. So what I want to say is, before we talk about Jupiter, Mercury in Sagittarius is going to show us what we are going to be doing for the rest of 2019. It is going to help us chart the map. So between now to January 4th, really pay attention to the steps that you are taking in the world. How do you want to get to where you go? How do you want to find your final destination, at least in the short term? These are the kinds of questions you will want to anchor in your consciousness, almost like a prayer. Where am I going? How am I going to get there? That's it. For the next couple of weeks, this is what needs to guide your thinking process. Journal, take notes, get a diary just for this period if you need to, because you will be revisiting and touching base again and again and again. Whatever you write now, whatever you plan now, you're going to be coming back to it throughout the year. So that is because of the Mercury in Sag transit. Now, let's move to Jupiter. Jupiter finally exited Scorpio, and everyone was so happy about it because we were like, oh my God, we can actually breathe. And Jupiter finally entered Scorpio round about, let me just see if I can get an exact date. I think for the U.S. it would have been around November the 8th, I believe. So when Jupiter entered Sagittarius, we as a collective started on this magnificent journey. We decided, we've already agreed a long time ago before we ever came into being, that we were going to walk a certain way together. Now, this sounds kind of counterintuitive given what's happening in the world, but you got to remember that astrology is bigger than us. From the sky perspective, from the universe's perspective, we are all moving in the direction that we need to be. But from the individual human perspective, it might look like we're spinning into utter chaos. Both perspectives are absolutely correct. So this year, as in this coming 2019, especially from November this year all throughout 2019, we're going to be on this collective walking together. We're going to be walking to find the route that humanity wants to take in its next evolutionary journey. Now, this is true all of the time, but it's especially true in Sagittarius. And why is that? Because Sagittarius is the teacher. star that's got its bow aimed in the direction where it wants to be. It's still conflicting with its so-called lower desires, lower ego, and its higher mind. I don't like those terms, but it's basically saying that we are still in that struggle between ego and spirit. We are still trying to decide from which center of consciousness we wish to operate. Now, Sagittarius's energy very much corresponds with the archetype of the Hierophant or Hierophant, I'm not sure how you say it, but the Hierophant in the tarot, and it is really that energy that says, go that way. Now, in recent history, it has been used very much to invoke that, kind of white-bearded patriarch that's wearing something and telling you that this is God, this is life, this is how you go. But in ancient times, this would easily apply to the feminine, to the women, to the beings who resonated with that yin archetype, who were very much in service of spirit. So I would very much challenge the idea that Sagittarius is a masculine sign in the sense of a gendered male energy. Because we have rewritten our collective relationship with spirituality and very much cut out one half of the population. But that's a completely different story. Still, effectively, this is the energy of the way shower. Now, I like to talk about two very important points in Sagittarius. One is currently at 14 degrees Sagittarius, a point called the Great Attractor, and the other one is at 27 degrees Sagittarius, and that is called the Galactic Center. Now, not too many people talk about this, and I'm going to be doing a seminar on this really soon, but these are two pivotal points in astrology. Now, the Great Attractor, as far as I understand, because I got points close to these buggers, so the Great Attractor, as far as I understand, is a point that really pushes and pulls us to try and find the road that we need to take. And Jupiter is going to be doing a lot on the Great Attractor this year, and we will talk about that in a sec. But effectively, when the Great Attractor comes about, people are going to actually, at the human level, feel more polarized. They're going to be seeing the differences rather than what actually unites us together. They're going to be seeing ideologies that cut rather than build bridges, because everyone is trying to define themselves. I mean, even yesterday when I was writing my article on Mercury in Sagittarius, I was at my brother's office, and I overheard someone, and I just knew energetically that they did not know what to do with me. My brother just introduced me as his sister, and I could hear the conversation. They had the door open, and he just started talking about light working and karma and everything, and it was all about the knowledge that he had and that he really, really needed to impart. And I could feel that he also possibly just did not know what to do with the fact that I came from a different school of thought. There was this sense of needing to define himself, not necessarily in an adversarial way, but there was a need that wasn't really a need. It just came out of the blue because the ego was trying to say, well, someone's doing something else, I've got to say my thing. And really, that's not necessary. When we realize that the truth that we are looking for is not out there and is really inside ourselves, we don't need to be carrying a big calling card that says, this is who I am. I've really thought about this calling card business, and I don't really know if the first thing I want someone to see about me is the Sky Priestess. I'd rather say, hello, I am Bairavee. But that's not how business works. But still, effectively, we're going to want to take those calling cards and take them one step further to say, this is me, this is my badge, this is what I do, this is what I think. Sometimes I see it even on my threads and profiles. I might be saying something, and then someone will completely come in and make it about them and what they know. They don't even know that they're doing it. But it'll just be like, part of me is thinking, okay, breathe, just let people say what they want. It's still their right. Just breathe. That has been one of the biggest challenges. But effectively, people are going to make their truth about themselves, and that is not going to be helpful, especially in you guys. You guys know about polarization. I mean, your country is kind of split down the middle in terms of the political spectrum right now, at least in terms of those who vote. But it's going to be a time where people are going to want to entrench those divides a hell of a lot more, because this is what Sagittarius does. It's my way or the highway. It's my truth. Everybody else is a dumbass. So, that's going to be that kind of an attitude coming out more and more and more this year. And for those of us on a spiritual path, well, it's very easier to fall into that whole holier than thou camp. Oh yes, they will get there. I cannot tell you how much that incenses me. But, we just don't need to judge. We just need to be what we are and allow others to be what they are. There are, of course, exceptions to this. Especially when the great attractor alignments come about, we're going to be seeing others' behaviors and actions as words as almost personally attacking us, because too much of identification has come to our brand of this. If anyone wants the truth, we're all different. One person's, medicine is another person's poison. We can't really judge that. Now, there are, of course, some instances where certain truths lead to fundamental violations of other people's rights. And those are instances in which silence is really not something I would do. I would get up and say something, but that's each and every person's right. And then there are some instances where really getting into that online debate with someone for hours is really not just worth it, because it's going to do jack all. So these are the kinds of considerations that we need to make on a daily basis as Jupiter is in the Sagittarian transit. Is it worth defending my truth? Is there really something to defend? Or in this case, is my truth going to save a life? So in some cases, we're going to see those more extreme situations come out where you're really going to need to see if your truth meets action, or is it all just words? So these are some of the kinds of challenges that are going to be coming out. Now, the U.S. is especially affected by this alignment because it basically has its ascendant very close to the great attractor. That's one of the reasons why I keep heading back there. I've got a lot of alignments close to the great attractor. So when I go there, I pick up the pulse of what's happening very, very quickly. And we're going to be seeing a lot more polarization in the psyche of the U.S., especially when people are pushed into opposing camps. And this is exactly what we need to be. I wouldn't even call it being against it. This is what we need to be aware of. There is a way of having conversations in ways that actually respect and allow other people to have different languages, to have different voices, to have different ways of seeing the world. And the art of holding that common public space for debate and discussion is really what we need to keep alive right now, not just in the U.S., all over the world, but especially in the U.S. because of its political chart. Do I make sense so far?
100%. Absolutely. Spot on. Mm-hmm.
So effectively, this is going to be one of the challenges for everyone living in the States. And I'm sure this is a reality that they have already been living in. But being aware that these challenges are coming will hopefully give us the perspective we need to basically look at it when it comes up and go, okay, I know what's happening. I know why this person's buttons are getting pushed. I'm going to go do things a different way now. And that is ideally the best that astrology can do, because at the end of the day, it's still free will, free will, free will. Now, the first time this challenge is going to be coming up is basically in January, so start of the next year. We're already going to be seeing Jupiter on the great attractor, which is, like I said, at 14 degrees Sagittarius. So that's already going to be, it enters 14 Sag around January 12th. And this is going to be a time where we are already going to be seeing that big push and pull. Just remember, from the universal perspective, humanity is probably doing what it needs to be doing. From our human perspective, things look very different. The cosmos doesn't know what it's doing most of the time, I have found, so it pays to have faith in this. And this test of faith is really what's going to be coming up as early as January, because Jupiter is going to be squaring Neptune. Now, Neptune is at 14 degrees Pisces, and this is where the water gets murky. So this is where we are really going to need to dig in deep, as early as January, to dig in deep and really consider, is what we are seeing really what is there? Are we being deceived? Are we being deceived by someone else, or are we deceiving ourselves? Because sometimes truth is but ugly. Sometimes truth is the kind of thing that you want to run a million miles away from because it's ugly. And sometimes lies are packaged in the most beautiful, seductive, alluring form, and we just fall for it because it's pretty and it looks nice. It applies in politics. It applies in spirituality. Be very aware of things that are trying to sell themselves to you as being, overly sparkly, overly spiritual, overly, in the light, in the love, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Because those are, in some sense, what I have seen, those are the sales pitches for things that really have a very different vibration and frequency. That's not to say that I have anything against light workers or love and light. I mean, truthfully, I probably am one, but I do have reservations against things which are so much about the light that they forget to embrace that there is something sacred in the dark, that there is something sacred in not appearing like you are a sparkly, bright, glittering thing all of the time. We all got our darkness, and recognition of that darkness is what makes us and keeps us human. So whether it is in terms of your political preferences or whether it is in terms of the spiritual journey you take, look at the thing or person or being or path or teacher or teaching that brings you to truth. And even if that truth is ugly, dig. Because that's where you're going to find, whatever it is that it is hidden from you that you need to find. If you just stop at the surface level of what looks comfortable, what looks nice, what looks like something you want to believe in, you might just find yourself deceiving yourself and others. Make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
yes,
this challenge is going to be coming up as early as January. It's going to be a fun-packed year, I can tell you that.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's going to be a heck of a year. But, I mean, it's not going to be 2018. Trust me, it's not going to be 2018. There's going to be a lot more dynamism. But that just means that we got to keep our eyes on the ball because things are going to be moving a lot faster, a lot quicker than we would like them to. So Jupiter will continue moving through Sagittarius, and we're like, yay, we have an understanding of what this is about. We're going to be expanding, learning, teaching, traveling, growing, which is great. Round about April, let me just get the exact date for you guys in the U.S., round about, just give me a sec, about April 10th or so, I believe, Jupiter starts to go in reverse. This is not a bad thing. Retrogrades are not necessarily bad things. When you have energy that's moving very, very, very quickly, the retrograde is what actually allows you to catch your breath. So we're going to be having this collective from April onwards, which I hope will bring a lot of relief to people because the pace they're going to be setting for the first couple of months in 2019 is going to be a lot quicker than most people anticipate. It's a good thing. It just means we need scheduled rest. So Jupiter in reverse or Jupiter retrograde will then move back through Sagittarius where it was before. And, of course, it's going to be squaring Neptune yet again. Neptune at that time will be at 18 degrees Pisces, and it's going to be squaring it round about, I think it should be June the 16th. I'm just checking at my software live. Hang on. June the 15th, June the 16th. We're going to be seeing another square between Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter at 18 Sagittarius in reverse squaring Neptune at 18 degrees Pisces. So again, similar themes that we encounter in January will be revisited in June. So it might deal with the same people, the same religions, the same teachers, the same institutions, the same thoughts around travel. We're going to be revisiting and retweaking. So pay attention to January because it's going to come up again later in the year in terms of what it is we need to grow with. So, and then Jupiter will continue moving backwards from that point, again, from the earthbound perspective, and then it's going to reach that 14-degree great attractor position once more. So it's going to enter 14 degrees round about July the 24th, and we're just going to keep going backwards and backwards until round about middle of August. Let me just get that date for you. Okay, so about, say, August 11th. Now, that's when Jupiter is going to go direct. It's going to finish its retrograde motion on the great attractor, and this is why it's so important. So in other words, it's going to go all the way forwards, and then it's going to pull back and swing direction on this exact point we've been talking about. So in August, we're going to really be seeing that pulled and churned left and right to really realize where our relationship with truth sits. So this is really going to be a year where a lot of thought needs to go into our bigger ideology surrounding the world. And August is going to be a time where, again, from a human perspective, more polarization may occur. But hopefully, at least those on a spiritual journey will realize that this too is part of the Maya. This too is part of that illusion that we encounter as part of being human. And of course, that element of Maya or illusion comes back again and again and again with the Jupiter-Neptune squares. So then we see Jupiter moving forwards again, which we have understood. And he is, I say he, but Jupiter you could interpret as a she. For example, Vedic astrology actually associates some very powerful feminine forms of goddesses with some of these very key positions in astrology. For example, Jupiter, the great attractor, is actually corresponding to an ancient goddess of time called Jyeshtha, Jyestha, and the galactic center is not too far from another goddess associated as Nirti, Nrriti. So, whether we want to call this male or female is up to us. But effectively, we are seeing this movement to find this direction yet again. This is a movement to direction. This is recalibrating the compass and deciding how we actually go forwards. Now, speaking of going forwards, what I'm tracing for you now is when Jupiter actually goes on the galactic center. Now, Jupiter will be on the galactic center effectively in November 2019. And I know that sounds like a far time ahead, but really it's not going to be that slow. Things are going to move quite quickly this year, and you're going to want to catch your breath. So around about November 18th, 2019, so we're talking about next year, we're going to be seeing Jupiter entering 27 degrees Sagittarius. And this is going to be when we really bring it all home. So this is, I wouldn't really call this our reward, but this is really going to be the time where we look at, all right, I've chosen my path, who are my guides? Because believe it or not, people who are doing things in the world that I would consider, completely abominable have their own guides. And what I might be doing may be considered abominable by other people. I have my own guides, whether or not we agree with that path. The idea that guides only support the path that is right is part of that Sagittarian ego delusion. But effectively, November, especially between November 18th to 23rd, when Jupiter is at 27 degrees Sagittarius, is when we come very strongly into that vibration of coming home to the ones who teach us. Emanations from the galactic center that allow us to build a reality in alignment with the philosophy or paradigm of truth that we have chosen. So November 2019 is really going to coalesce the roads that we have been working towards taking. It's in some sense like we're walking on the path and we're getting a hand of it, and then finally we're getting the map. And we're going, okay, so I'm at point A. These are now all the other destinations I can take. And really, we're just going to be seeing this movement towards alignment all come together in November. So in some sense, we see the beginning of all of this happen in January. We revisit it in June. And then we come back to it in November through 2019. And it's quite a smooth, continuous journey, a smooth, continuous transit in that sense. We kind of go backwards and forwards till we realize what we want to do, and we kind of take off towards the end of next year. Now, the thing that really tempers this journey and really makes us wake up to the pitfalls that can come along when we become a little bit too sure of ourselves come with the Jupiter-Neptune squares. And I'm very happy these squares are there. Even though they are really, really going to annoy a lot of people, this is what's going to keep us grounded. This is what's going to make sure that we don't completely lose our sense of perspective and reality if we are willing to look past our limitations. So it's a phenomenal year of growth for all of us, but we've got to be brave. We've got to be brave enough to look at truth in ways that we have not wanted to look at it before. We have got to be brave enough to remember that truth without compassion is dangerous. We have got to remember that mind without spirit is probably rather useless in the long run. But these are the kinds of lessons that we are collectively going to have to explore and come to terms with for ourselves in the journey ahead. And just so you have the dates, I just want to make sure that we've covered all the Jupiter-Neptune square dates. We're looking at mid-January for Jupiter squared Neptune, the first time around, and then post-retrograde. So as Jupiter is moving in reverse, it comes back around again, around about mid-June. And, of course, it's going to come around one more time after Jupiter finishes its retrograde, and that's going to be, let's see, around about the tail end of September 2019. So we're going to be having all of these points of tweaking and retweaking. So what I would really say to people in terms of the mental, philosophical, ideational stuff, yeah, read stuff, engage in healthy debate, but at the same time, remember that everything that you believe is truth needs to nurture and express your spirit. Otherwise, you're creating a dichotomy that is probably going to cost you a lot more turns on the wheel, turns on the karmic cycle of incarnation and reincarnation. But, yeah, I think that about sums up that part of the journey.
Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you. And, yeah, so very precise. I see so much of that taking place all the time. And it's basically the shows that I had invited you in this series before this is about our knee-jerk reaction that we're having to everything that's being revealed to us, and the way that people, instead of thinking before they place their words out there and get into debates, need to be sort of reeled back in and exactly as you said, take a breath before you react and determine why it is you're reacting to something the way you're doing. And as you expressed, it is very difficult when we know that whether or not we're responding to something that someone posted and we want to place a comment, or someone's placed a comment on our post and we don't want to react back to that. But the best thing we can do, thank you for that reminder, because the little things we see in the Facebook commentaries are taking place on the world stage in the big, as you stated it, theater play that's going on. And they are playing their roles to the hilt and attempting to provoke reaction. It sort of surprises me sometimes that people get so involved in the political plays that they see being acted out. It's very good for them to hear that they're being suggested to respond very emotionally with a theatrical play as opposed to something that truly is taking place on the world stage. So thank you for that reminder. That was wonderful. Let's take then, since we are here, a little bit of a commercial break. I will mute your mic, and then I will come back to you in about just a little under 3 minutes, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Feminine Frequency Radio Network hosts shows 7 days a week. Call in to listen live 929-477-1183 and dial 1 to connect to the studio to ask a question, or listen online via blogtalkradio.com/Feminine Frequency Radio Network. Organic Frequency Radio Show is 1.5 hour live chat with Stephanie and Oksana and their lovely guests about the nature of existence and holistic way of living here and now, and perhaps even after. Join us every Monday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Time. Call-in number to listen live is 929-477-1183, and to ask a question, press 1 to connect to the studio. Our guests share their stories and walking path of their healing, along with services that they have developed and packaged for the rest of the world to experience and benefit from. We're here to hold a space for an exchange of experiences for the purpose of evolvement and expansion of consciousness.
Hello and welcome. You are now entering the corridors of Twilight Epiphanies Talk Radio with your host, Cindy Magnuson, premiering Thursday evenings, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on Feminine Frequency Radio Network. You are invited on a talk radio journey to the center of self. Join us as Cindy guides you, the listeners, in sensory and perception upgrades where revelations and golden epiphanies pierce the veils of illusion. Don't miss this opportunity for your next dose of Twilight Epiphanies. Okay, and hello there, Bairavee. Do we still have you on the line?
Yes, we do.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, that was, that felt so good. It just felt wonderful to hear such thorough insights, because literally, I believe that is where our spiritual strength is going to come from if we are able to pass through this time frame here and really come to a higher level of spiritual discernment. And I get it. I understand having difficulty with refining what the voices are that we listen to, what the impulses are that we're having, what our reactions are. It's difficult for people to kind of determine whether or not they're having sort of a cognitive dissonance reaction, or are they having a sincere doubt about something that says, "Oh, I'm not judging. I'm receiving a very true energy from this person that I need to build up my boundaries a little bit more." And that is exactly what you spoke about. And again, on our individual lives, that's taking place. And then we also need to apply that to how we give our energies into what's taking place with the government institutions, because we know that they understand what these energies are, and they're playing their positions, actually. And as you know, said, and they're very well aware of it. So, it's very nice for me to speak with you who understands that the theater there, and you've had that backstage awareness because you were there. I've had people that have just met me at a gas station, and this person was an oil mandate, and he spoke 5 languages. He was one of the blue bloods. He came from London. He was Indian, and he would do oil sales because he spoke different languages, and he knew President Obama very well firsthand. Well, he said, "What do you think of the two political parties?" And I said, "Well, they're just different sides of the same coin." And he slapped his hand down on the dinner table where we were eating. He said, "That's so right." He said, "Behind the scenes, they're all friends. They're all friends."
Yep.
and he meant it. This was just a casual conversation he was having with me. He also told me lots of, very interesting information, as well. In one of my previous shows, I spoke about a CIA agent who had befriended me and also gave me very interesting behind-the-scenes information. So it's very good for people to understand, they need to really be attentive to where they're giving their energy and how they're giving it. So thank you for that. I know many people will replay this show very many times just to hear that advice, because that's going to spread out through the rest of this time. I think that's one of the biggest platforms for what this change up of ages needs right now, exactly what you described. So thank you. I don't know if you want to add anything else in here, but I would like, so feel free to do something different, but I would like you to tell the audience about your the type of readings that you do, how you offer your readings. So whichever direction, if you had something else in mind you wanted to talk about, we have plenty of time. You can stay on, for another, 40 minutes if you're still interested. It's entirely up to your time, or we can finish at the 90-minute mark coming up in about 20 minutes. But whichever direction you would like to go, I would love to hear more about the types of readings that you do, what you have to offer.
Well, before I do that, and first of all, there are several things I want to say. First of all, it is very rare for me to meet someone who can understand what I'm saying, and that isn't meant to be condescending to anyone, because people understand astrology. It's not mumbo-jumbo anymore. It's something that millions of people are interested in. But to really understand the spirit behind it takes a very rare type of soul. And I don't just get on the radio with anybody. I have learned through experience that that person needs to be in resonance. Otherwise, it's going to be a shitstorm. But when I hear you and when I hear your voice, I can hear the way you are creating a very safe container for the expression of new energy that wants to come through, and the transmutation of old energy that needs to really, upgrade a little bit or dissolve. And I just want to really send this a little bit back to you, because it is rare to find a facilitator and a radio interviewer who has that particular skill set. And it's just, you can ask questions, but you can also ask and reframe questions in a way that actually heals the person who is listening to you. And you have that gift. That we've interacted, like in terms of a conversation. We've had one conversation together, and I saw it then, but I definitely am seeing it now. So really, thank you for creating your platform, for reaching out to the people who you are reaching out to, because I know you are stirring them in a very deep way, whether or not they are aware of it. They probably are. But yeah, so thank you for being you. And that is the first thing I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. I'm very touched. Thank you. I felt it the first time I heard you talking with Bernhard, and I just thought, wow, I have to talk to her. As we talked about, I talked to you about when I heard you talking about going beyond astrology. And I had realized that in doing hundreds of numerology readings, how many people come in and they are outside of what I see on paper, or it's not on paper, but they're expressing it. And I thought, oh, there's something about that. And when I heard you expressing that, seriously, I could listen again and again and just sing there with you. So thank you. I feel you are very much a sister soul, and I very much appreciate that I have tears. Thank you.
Yeah, so, you got me in the beginning. It's my turn.
Okay. I'll let it away. So then I hope together that, yes, we can definitely touch those spaces. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's why it's special to me for someone else to see that and understand that. So I appreciate it, and it's why I'm very much looking forward to more talks then. Thank you. I hope we definitely can do this again and continue to share that philosophy. And I'm hoping, sister, you need to rub off on me in some ways, because your words just are, they just floor me. I just sit here and go, oh, with my mouth open, I'm nodding my head, and I don't want to say anything because I want to make sure that this letter talk is so beautiful. So thank you. I know this will help very many people. And
Good.
so, yes, and then anything else, please share with us anything else you would like to share that you felt you needed to more articulate on regarding what you had spoken about, and or we can go into, I found it very interesting when you were talking about, how you do your readings. You have a really nice page, if anyone hasn't gone to your website and looked at how you prepare someone to come in for a reading, and that really helps someone to, look at themselves and make sure that, what they're looking for there. And then it helps them to narrow down what they're going to talk about when they have a reading with you. If I can just share a little bit, to the audience, I've talked about this in other shows, and I've been, working through situations here that were a little challenging. And I had a dream about, there was a spirit of someone inside someone else, and I dreamt about that, meeting that spirit. And that spirit has given us over here some difficulties. And as soon as I sat down and talked with Bairavee in my astrology reading, and I mentioned something here, she immediately, without me saying anything about that, described to a T the image, that I had seen, and explained to me further what that meant. And it's not very often, again, that someone doing astrology is going to also have your spiritist side, your spiritual understandings, in order to perceive on that level of what is taking place, because it made such a difference. And then I had just done a series of shows, and I really became extremely challenged during the shows on a physiological, aspect where I found my anxiety rising up. I started to drink caffeine again, and that was all spiraling into very hard. I mean, I understood it from a certain level of what I was passing through, because, in terms of how we work with astrology and numerology, when I see a cycle coming up that someone says in, numerology, it's going to be a challenge, I look at it as, well, it's something that happened in the past. We're moving through it again, but it's this wonderful opportunity to supersede it. So that's why I like taking it up off the paper and not looking at it as, it's going to be a very challenging situation. I just turned around, even though it was a challenging situation, and went to the silver lining as much as possible, and transformed my preliminary thinking about what I was going into. And so everything then that you gave me about what was around me was so important. It really helped me to get centered and focused. I'm back off of caffeine. My system has calmed down again, and I came to terms with what was happening there. So thank you. And I hope that very many people here get to share that space with you. So if you can tell us a little bit more.
Okay. Well, in terms of a session, it depends. It depends how high my psychic antenna are up that day. I mean, sometimes I kind of get the download of what the situation is before I look at the chart, before I even know who the client is. And they'll come to me and I'm like, I have this. And I'll just be like, wait a minute. Is this person hanging around you? Does that have this features? Did you meet them at this time? Okay, this is your problem. Here's a partial refund. We just finished it in 5 minutes. Goodbye. So sometimes that happens.
Sure.
Sometimes. But that is a rare case. So when that happens, I make sure, I get paid for the time that I use. No more, no less. But usually I just create a set space for whatever needs to come in that is benevolent, because this is very important. Spirituality means spirit. It doesn't mean good spirit, bad spirit. It just means spirit. So we got to keep safe spaces here, because there are a lot of things in the universe that would like to convince us that they are in our highest and deepest interest, but they are not. So what I do is I first set a space. I make sure that my integrity is there, that I'm doing the best I can, because no matter how hard I try, there will be cases where someone really hears something they don't want to hear, or some perspective that I did not have at that level of my development prevents me from seeing the larger picture. I mean, these types of things happen, but they are the cases that actually just put you to the next level, but they are outliers. Most of the time, I just set the space, I look at the chart, I kind of ask the person to be very focused, very concise. Again, I am a Capricorn. I do not beat around the bush. I'll be like, okay, give me the dates. Right, this is the situation. This is the pattern that's happening. This is how you transform it. And it's very clear cut. There is no flooping about. It's just, this is what's happening. Here it is. Here is an analysis from someone who does not know you, who is not invested in you one way or another. And so this is a perspective that you then take to make sense of things for yourself. What I don't do in my readings is I don't play God. I don't tell someone that this is their life, this is their future, this is their destiny. I say, this is the pattern that's happening. This is the way the current is moving. You can go X, Y, Z way with these possibilities of success. But the choice is in your hands. And the way of framing changes the energy that comes through the session. Now, that is on, like, if you're just going more so the astrology side. Sometimes it is usually a combination of astrology and psychic intuition. If something is happening that has to do with somebody's past life that hasn't come up, then that past life will come into the reading and start bugging me. And I'll be like, were you here in this lifetime doing this? And they'll be like, yes. And I'll be like, here, go sit and meditate for a while, come back. And then they do, and we sort it, and then we can move on, because people come to me because they know I'm a priestess. I don't like calling myself an astrologer, because really I feel there's more people who know more about the nuances and the science of astrology. And even though I will get there intuitively, I feel it is accurate to call them astrologers. But what I am, I don't know. Priestess is close. I do intercede in spiritual matters. I do, basically kind of put prayers on behalf of people or talk to spirits when I need to. I prefer not doing that most of the time. It takes a lot of energy. But so, I didn't know what to call myself. And I was asking my brother, and I'm like, what should I call myself? Dr.
Okay. Well, it looks like Bairavee accidentally dropped the call at this time, and we will give her a little bit of time to come back in and finish her story about her incredible readings. And okay, hold on. Here she is. So let me open up the mic for her.
Right. So as I was saying, what do I call myself? And of course, the universe is still trying to come in and tell me what to do. So I asked my brother, and I go, well, what am I supposed to say? Dr. Bairavee Balasubramaniam, PhD, is pretty long. So what do? I need something catchy. And he goes, well, you're a priestess. I'm like, yeah. So he thought, when you look at astrology, I'm like, yeah. Astro priestess, celestial priestess, what can we do? Sky priestess. And that was how the name was set. So it was my brother who gave me that name. I mean, in fact, I got outed as a priestess by a friend by accident. So none of these things are things that I actually planned. It's funny. I can predict everything for everybody else. When it comes to my chart, other astrologers get stumped. I get stumped. No one seems to know. But I suppose it keeps my life interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. My theory for the world surviving is to be a woman, and how is it that they say that it's a woman's prerogative to always change her mind? So I think that I truly think that our non-predictability is our ace in the hole. And I think you know what I mean. Uh-huh.
I do. I do.
And I think that's precisely why. Yes. Wonderful. Yes. I like that. I like that a lot. And interesting. I'm somewhat similar in numerology also. I've taken it on a different course and a different route. And I just like to read it Cindy style, and it works. So I keep it that way.
It works.
It works. And now you have some changes coming up. You are going to be introducing some workshops, seminars. I'm not sure how you had placed it. So we will have some news for you coming up, some new formats, which I think are very important and very good. Do you want to tell us anything about that?
Sure. I mean, for the past 5 years or so, I've been doing this work essentially for free, in the sense that I've just been sharing and putting stuff up there. And, you know, I got college loans, I got bills, I got family responsibilities, my parents are old, I got to do stuff. So I have to charge what I do for sessions, because really a half an hour reading with me might be half an hour for the client. But it might even be 2 hours for me recovering afterwards, because it takes so much of energy to, you know, help a person lift a karmic dynamic that they've been working through for 30 years in 20 minutes. It takes a lot of energy. So I realized that this is not sustainable. I'm going to die. I'm going to burn out, literally, if I keep doing this. And so I finally said, you know what, after 5 years, I just kind of went, people, I love you. I will always give you something to work with, but I am going to need to take care of my material existence and my responsibilities. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be introducing a tiered membership system. There will be a free component, or, you know, might be something like a nominal fee, but more as a token rather than anything else. And there will be membership tiers for people who can afford more, and they will get more details. But in terms of just the core of what's happening or a basic spiritual teaching, that's still going to be available for people to see. So essentially a tiered paywall. I'm also going to be doing seminars that will be purchasable online. So anyone can get it from anywhere in the world. I have been doing live workshops and whatnot in the U.S., in Australia, and where else? In England, and a bunch of other places I can't remember right now. And effectively, you know, those work. They when I go and travel and do a workshop, I work much more with the energy of the land that is there. But right now in my life, it kind of feels like I need to be in one place and build for myself, share what I can, but also receive the blessings that I am sharing with others in ways that I can use. So I am partially going to monetize what I share, but making sure people have an access to the basic minimum. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing.
Oh, it's a wonderful idea, yes, and it is part of the progression that's coming up here. And moving with that, I'm moving in that same space with you. I wholly agree. Yes. Okay.
I think we've realized, someone on my page, and sometimes I get the best comments, someone just said, you know what, if we keep not supporting our priestesses and facilitators, then only people who can afford to work for free will. And that is not representative. She put it in a really beautiful way. But effectively, if we don't support the people who are nurturing us, who are inspiring us, we are not actually going to get the best of the best. We're basically going to get eventually the 1% telling us how to live spiritual lives. That ain't going to work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I recognize in you the space where I believe that, in a different planetary time and space, there was afforded the ability to just have all of your needs met and do what you loved to do. Mm-hmm. So coming into, as you said, a different world like this makes it a little difficult sometimes. And I'm really not in favor of the cliches that people toss around in New Age spirituality memes that, we devalue our work, or we don't have self-value because we are not charging for this or that or giving too much. And I just don't feel that way about either yourself or myself or others who find ourselves in need of maybe needing to rework how we are structuring our financial receiving and giving. And it comes down to we just really, truly care about doing a good job. And I really appreciate that you are talking about here about how much energy it does take. And I want everyone to know that I had, maybe it was a 10 o'clock in the morning appointment scheduled with Bairavee, and she spent 20 minutes before she got on with me clearing the energy field. And I was completely aware of it because, I presented with her at sort of the peak coming off of a time frame when I was, sort of running 24/7 with completing some tasks. And because of the fact that I was passing through a cycle of time where I was breaking the norms of what happened in other lifetime spaces, that it didn't go so well. I had a lot of energy around me that needed to be cleared at that time. And so her 20 minutes there, which I completely trusted and opened up to her, felt so incredibly safe. She completely helped me to re-ground myself and move forward from there. I cannot remember a time when I so easily here have come off of caffeine again. So I thank you for that. I do fully appreciate it. There aren't, very many people who can understand the energy output there that is needed, and it's very true. And we need that downtime. Sometimes I can do energy work, even at a Reiki share for 3 hours, and sometimes come home the next day. And if there weren't enough windows open, and sometimes, at this one there was, we had a lot of sage that was burning, but it wasn't leaving the room. And the next day afterwards, I was down for almost a day. Because I had transmuted so much. And that's okay. It was a learning experience. I didn't realize, how I was open and vulnerable, but it did take the next day to recover from that. I went back the week after that and was a little bit more prepared. But, that's what's taking place when we are, exchanging, so much energy output there to work with on that multidimensional level. So very important. Well, I would like you also here now, we can be rounding up the show, and would you please give the audience your contact information and the different ways that they can reach you?
All right. Well, basically, the best way to find me is on Facebook. I know there are other social media platforms, but really that's still the big one for now. Just look for my name, which I'm sure will probably be easier for you if you looked up the link that you are hearing this from. My name is Bairavee Balasubramaniam. If you prefer, you can look for my business page called The Sky Priestess, and that's the easiest way to find me. I also have my website, www.BairaveeBalasubramaniam.com. And again, even if you type in The Sky Priestess on Google, you are going to find me one way or another. Now, if you are interested in a session with me, just bear in mind that most of the time I'm recovering from the last session. So if I don't get back to you instantly, it is not because I am ignoring you. I read all my emails. Now, just in case you guys are interested, drop me a line through my website. I offer several different types of readings. One is the general session for 45 minutes. For most people, that is more than enough. There is the discovery session for beginners or for intermediate astrologers who want a lot more focus on certain aspects of their chart. I use about 150 different astrological bodies in a reading. So that includes a lot of asteroids that most astrological readings ignore. There is a middle session, which is 1.5 hours long, which is more for in-depth spiritual exploration for intermediate practitioners, ideally people who have been walking with spirit and facilitating others for a 5-10 year period. The 1.5 hour session is also appropriate for synastry and relationship readings. I will need the consent and participation of all parties when doing so. The 1.5 hour session is also appropriate for astrological readings for young people, guiding newborns, kids, and teenagers through the birth chart. You can find all the details of pricing on my website. And if you are new to astrology, just take the general session. We will get you sorted. In terms of other ways of finding me, I am also on Twitter, Priestess. I've also got a YouTube channel under my name, Bairavee Balasubramaniam. All you got to do is just Google me.
Okay, perfect. Very good. Thank you. Okay, well, we are rounding off my night here and your morning, correct? There in Malaysia. So thank you for having this conversation with me all the way over in Malaysia. So I very much appreciate you giving me the time, and most certainly we will discuss in the future you coming on again and what insights you have to bring us and share some more of your beautiful spiritual philosophy. So thank you, Bairavee, and everyone else out in the listening audience. My next week's show will be Stefania Crispino, who is the fruitarian farmer in Italy, and she's going to come on and talk to us all about the good, the challenges, and the very interesting spaces there she has in working with her farm and bringing back natural basket weaving, processing olives after they've grown them on the land, and grapes, and very much more. So thank you all. Good night, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye, Bairavee.
All right. Bye, Cindy.
Okay.